Good evening. This is John and Merlin on Gnous House. Our imaginary spiritual, well, it's not imaginary, our spiritual channel for wisdom that we wish to bring to other folk. We are no great shakes super people, but we have a lot to say for those who may be interested in alternative ways of seeing the world. And one of the things that we will be talking about, and this is an introduction, is about a particular character who lived in Tibet, who had a difficult life. He followed the family tradition, as many ordinary families will do, and part of that tradition was to take revenge on other parts of the family who apparently had stolen from them. And it seems a most unusual story to talk about, but it's the unwisdom of this character Milarepa, because he was asked by his mother to go out and learn black magic and to come back and perform his magic against the uncle and aunt who had stolen the family fortunes. And Milarepa did, as his mother said, and also learned afterwards, having found another character called Marpa, the translator, that there could have been wiser ways of dealing with the situation than learning black magic. But his stories, I laugh, are deep, difficult, and sometimes hilarious. What would you say, Merlin?
Well, the Milarepa, thank you, John. The Milarepa stories seem to be an infinite source of funny stories, as you say, and with a very deep meaning behind them. If you can access those deeper levels of meaning in them, they are fun stories. They're very much in an ancient Tibetan landscape of meditating yogis in remote caves up in the Himalayas. So Milarepa has come from this tradition of meditating yogis that go to these very inaccessible places so that they can concentrate on their meditation and not be disturbed. So when Milarepa went and found his teacher Marpa to teach him how to move away from the dangers of black magic, because they'd obviously rebounded on him and he needed to, redeem himself, so to speak, because when you dabble in those kinds of things, you get bitten. And so he got bitten. Yeah. Went to Marpa, the translator, said, "Look, you're a yogi. Can you help me? Because I've done this, and your teachings should hopefully take me away from all of that. And will you give me your teachings?" But Marpa, like quite a lot of these teachers and sages in these stories, was quite reluctant to give him the teachings initially. Yes. And got him to perform other seemingly mundane tasks, which Milarepa couldn't quite really make much sense of or understand why he's being able to do these things, like move a pile of dirt from one place to another and then back again.
Or stones.
All of those. There's actually a lot in that. Different things that he was asked to do that actually did have a deeper meaning, but he thought they were mundane. But the teachings were in those mundane tasks, and even the teaching of being able to start with the mundane is a teaching. He wanted a quick fix. We want it now. We want instant enlightenment. Give me everything now, because I'm asking you for it. So Milarepa was kind of, oh, no. But he'd come from a lineage of practitioners, hadn't he, that come from India. Yes. So originally the teachings that he eventually did give to Milarepa, when he'd earned the right to have them, so to speak, was given these teachings of meditation that come from a long lineage of yogis from India. Tilopa of the Ganges was a practitioner who gave the teachings to another yogi, Naropa, who took them to Tibet. and gave them to Milarepa to translate from Sanskrit into Tibetan.
Yes.
So Milarepa was an interesting person because he took the teachings of Tilopa to Tibet that Milarepa eventually got to learn. And there's a beautiful verse called the Song of Mahamudra, which is one of the most famous verses attributed to Milarepa, but he actually got it from Milarepa, who got it from Naropa, who got it from Tilopa of the Ganges.
Yes.
So it was an established lineage, so his teacher was a very trustworthy, reputable, well-known master of his recognised master of his lineage, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Despite his seemingly sort of spiky way of dealing with Milarepa, because he wasn't very cooperative.
Well, he wasn't. He gave him so many chores to do that the average person would have broken, and he pushed and pushed, and the reason for it was to redeem his own consciousness. That's what the master was aiming at, but he didn't tell him. He told him to build a tower that I'd like to speak of perhaps a little more in detail another time, but apparently it's still standing. One of the few pieces of history in Tibet that's untouched.
There is a cave where Milarepa meditated for a long period of time, which is still a well-known shrine and place of pilgrimage for people in India and Tibet and Bhutan and those Himalayan countries who all know about Milarepa. So yeah, you can visit his cave. It's still there, and you can go there. I think the Chinese tried to stop people going there at one point, but as far as I know, that region of Tibet's still open to pilgrims.
That'll be good. There's many stories with this man. One that I would like to put in is when he first went to meet his master, Milarepa. There is a whole story in itself where that day Milarepa went and ploughed the fields, which is something he hadn't done for 20 or 30 years.
He was a farmer, wasn't he?
He was a farmer.
Kept a small holding.
Yeah.
So he had that layman's life as well as being a yogi,
Absolutely.
which is quite a rare thing to be able to hold both, be a master and yet still have that everyday life.
On that day, Milarepa's wife was surprised when he decides to go out and plough the fields. Well, that very day, early in the morning, along comes Milarepa looking for Milarepa, the translator, the master in the monastic house, farmstead, and he saw a labourer ploughing in the fields, went up to the labourer and asked him, "Can you tell me whether Master Milarepa lives in this house?" And the labourer, Master Milarepa himself, said, "Yes, of course he does." So Milarepa said, "Well, would you tell him I'm coming?" And he said, "Well, certainly, I'll go and tell the whole community. Indeed, if you carry on doing the ploughing for me, I will go now and prepare." So he spent the time finishing the ploughing on the field. When he went to meet the master, the time he walked through the door, a bolt of, well, not a bolt of lightning, that's what I would have liked to say. The sun was clear in the clouds at that very moment, and he walked in with a four-handled bowl, and it glittered, and they knew there was something special in this meeting.
It was an auspicious sign that something was about to happen.
Yes.
Well, wasn't Milarepa a clever one to play the part of let Milarepa think that he was speaking to somebody else, and he played on that.
Absolutely.
I can't actually remember what. Oh, Milarepa does mean translator. It does actually mean that. Incidentally, Milarepa, the name, well, it's actually pronounced, in Tibet, it's a Tibetan name, it's actually pronounced Milarepa, and
Yeah.
it means cotton-clad one, or one who is clad in cotton. So because that's all, his only possessions, Milarepa's only possessions, as the cotton-cladded one, was his cotton cloth that he wore, a single covering for his whole, that's all he wore, that was his clothing, his mat, his cushion and his bedding.
Yeah.
And a bowl that all he ate was at one period in his life when he was in this remote cave in Tibet, as you know, John, all he ate was nettles. And there's a story about his bowl, isn't there?
There is.
Perhaps we'll tell that story another time.
I think so. It's
But they're funny, aren't they? Because they do illuminate a lifestyle that most of us in the West wouldn't be familiar with. You know, that environment. You're talking 18,000 feet above sea level. 5,000 feet above the snow line, wearing nothing but a cotton cloth.
Yep.
He must have known something that maybe we can talk about.
Well, yes.
The kind of practices that you can do that enable you to do that another time, because they're secret tantric practices and very deep, and that's why Milarepa didn't just give them out to somebody coming along saying, give me it all now.
Well, when Milarepa went to see Milarepa, he was aware that having done what his mother had asked, he had wreaked vengeance upon the uncle who had hurt the family. He thought that he, having learned through 3 different masters of black magic, enough for him personally to feel he could go and trash the village, which he did, and that's a story in its own right. But he's looking then for a master who can show him a more true path.
That's it, that's
and
the
this
point.
is Master Milarepa. He knows he's got a master magician, but he also knows he's a lightweight compared with the people of the lineage that he's been living and working with for many lifetimes.
Well, that's why he went to him, isn't it? Because he was told about this teacher, because he went around a lot of Tibet trying to find a teacher, as people do. Well, he didn't find one, and eventually people say, you need to go and see Milarepa, and then everybody kept saying, you need to go and see him. So eventually, so
He went to see
you don't
him.
get a reputation like that in that kind of environment if it's not real. So I would say that he was probably an abbot of a monastery, and therefore responsible for all the vegetables that would be providing the food for the monks and this kind of thing, I'm sure. That's
He's
more the context.
a responsible being.
And it could have even been a prince. Some of these people were quite wealthy, and so they weren't all ragged. So Milarepa's just got his cotton cloth and his bowl, but his teacher was, probably lived a very simple life. But he's from the lineage of what we call the Mahasiddhas. You've heard of them, the Mahasiddhas. So they come from India, but they've also been found in Tibet, and they are perfected masters. That's what it means, and they can do anything. You hear stories of Babaji and these yogis who can perform all kinds of what we would call miracles.
Well,
so these Mahasiddhas had these powers. So you were saying, John, that Milarepa had been involved in magic, but not coming from such an ethical basis. So when he basically went to Milarepa to say, look, like, you please show me how to not get caught up in this dark stuff anymore. I need you to show me a way away from that, where I can work through that stuff that I've done, clear myself of that and of my past, and in a way begin again with a new set of practices that are
and
to
here,
do with black magic.
and
This
here
is
I
yoga,
will
this is
interject,
meditation, so
where
it's a different level altogether.
Milarepa then says, I will give you the full teachings, but I require you to do some work.
That's
which
right.
was half a lifetime of labour through choice.
Yeah.
But before he gave him the teachings, or rather before he refused to give him the teachings until he was ready, the first thing that he asked Milarepa to do he said, in this area where I live, I have other monks and visitors, and there are robbers in this area. And they have been attacking and scaring these people. It's been quite difficult. I think it would be good if you were to go down and to the area that they live and create havoc and thunderstorms and lightning and do some magic just to cheer them up, not to hurt anybody, but to let them know that you're in town if you're up for it. And Milarepa thought, blimey, this is odd. I've come here to look for the white path and he wants me to throw eggs. Well, I'll show him. So, of course he did. And he didn't kill anybody.
Well, that was teaching, wasn't it?
He caused all sorts of havoc. And on the way back, he saw dead sparrows. And dead starlings. And he picked them up and put them in his apron. And he went back. And he said to Marpa, I've done what you've asked. And I weren't happy about it, because look what's happened here. And he showed the apron full of dead animals. And Marpa put his hands over the animals and they came back to life. And that's when Milarepa knew that he had the right master. That's why he was prepared to spend the next 20 years working so hard building the tower. That tower, which is physical, was the tower in his heart, and it had a hell of a lot more bricks than the physical one.
Yeah, there's another teaching in that as well, isn't there, John? So in a way, when Milarepa thought that he wasn't getting any teachings from him, he was getting loads of teachings, actually,
Yes.
but he didn't recognise them as teachings to begin with. It wasn't until he started to get the more esoteric stuff, which is what he was after, that he realised, actually in hindsight, Marpa was teaching me right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So actually we can learn from anything, can't we? Not just some esoteric practice, but everything can be a teaching. Life itself
Yes.
is a teaching. And so the guru, if you're looking for your guru, for your teacher, well, it's right in front of you. It's life itself, isn't it? You
Well,
can learn
it
from
is,
children, animals,
as
insects.
Milarepa had
Everybody's
to,
a teacher. Everything
as
is a teacher.
Milarepa had to work so hard in order to prepare his consciousness to understand the concepts of the philosophy that he was living and its life, he was able to develop.
Well, it's ethics, isn't it? He was given the insight into the consequences of one's actions when you do this. This is the law of nature, dharma. Things have consequences, so your actions have outcomes, and when you're aware and when you can see that the consequences of your actions through karma, cause and effect, then you can see quite clearly that you're not going to do that again. You're not going to repeat that action, because you know that if you do, what the consequences will be, and that's not wiping out a load of villagers with a thunderstorm to get back at their family because somebody did something. It's that higher teaching of it's not just, it doesn't matter what it is, it's that everything you do has consequences.
And when somebody
there's a
is
price to
able to
pay.
live at that level, as Marpa and Tilopa and Naropa and Milarepa and his pupil Richard,
The Mahasiddhas.
one of my favourites, then you can understand the saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Absolutely.
But the life of one's heart can be more steadfast after enlightenment.
Well, before you're doing it asleep and after you're doing it awake.
And this evening we have given a little of perhaps one eye open of awakenness of that which we know is available to all beings of goodwill. And we ask in this season that we share that with others.
Thank you, John. Lots of love.
Thank you, Gnous House, and the host Bridie's house
Bridie,
in the world.
peace.
Peace to all beings. Good evening.